I believe, the most underrated and perhaps the most valuable, or certainly one of the most valuable tools that you and I have in ministering to this world is having a blessed life. I am convinced it is absolutely the most underrated. Because what's happened throughout history is there's been such a devaluing of blessing. And it's almost been that if you can, it used to be that the intercessors would walk around depressed all the time, and that was how they kind of showed that they were serious and devoted to prayer. And thankfully that's been changing of late. And anybody happy you got delivered from that one? Anybody happy your church got delivered from that one? Yes. All right. So there's been this idea that if you just were always a little bit under it, that showed that you were really sincere. And there's also been corresponding lifestyle in economics. To just be kind of poor and broke all the time showed that you were really depending on the Lord. What would you rather have? What kind of lifestyle would you rather have? Where God provided for you every day? A miracle provision every day. I mean food literally just supernaturally appearing every day. Or to have a successful job where you prospered. See, that's the difference between the wilderness and the promised land. The promised land is not the supernatural provision every day. The promised land was that God blessed their work. And there are many folks that look at the lifestyle of daily dependence on the Lord for provision as the goal. It is a necessary school. But you don't live in school. Unless, like some of us, you weren't very good. And you maybe need to repeat a grade over and over again, which I never had to do, but you understand my picture. The process is not where you live, it's what you go through to get where God has designed you. Why do you think Jesus had his disciples leave everything, but before Jesus left, he made sure that they had a sword, they had a coat, they had things that they couldn't have during the journey? Why? Because the time without taught them the necessary stewardship principles so that they could then possess and possess correctly. When I talk about the blessed life, as we're going to read about in just a few moments, I'm actually not talking about money. It'll include that, but when I talk about the blessed life, it's a lot bigger than that. Psalm 67. Verse 1, God be merciful to us and bless us and cause his face to shine upon us, that your way may be known on earth and your salvation among all the nations. Stop right there. For me, this is one of the most provoking verses in this regard. This chapter, this psalm, is about international evangelism. What does it say? Verse 2, it says, that your way would be known on the earth and your salvation among the nations. The Lord has designed your life, designed my life in such a way that by living under the blessing of the Lord, we manifest his nature to a world that is ignorant about what he's like. This is going to be the most simple thing ever. But if we can get it, it'll change our cities. The reason is this. The greatest vacuum in human knowledge, in the vast realms of knowledge that humanity has on this planet, the greatest vacuum is the vacuum of the knowledge of the nature of God. There is no greater area of ignorance and deception. Now, I don't know if you noticed or not, But the bar crowd and the drug crowd and the whatever crowd you want to label did not sign up for this conference. They're not coming to our meetings, responding to our sermons that celebrate the greatness of God. Sermons will not impact them. People are impacted by observation, seeing something different on a person's life. It doesn't mean I have 4 cars and 3 houses and planes and boats. That's not the blessed life. The blessed life is a wife who loves me. A blessed life is kids who still think I'm cool. I mean, honestly, let's be really honest. It's the fact that I have friends around me that would take a bullet for me. I don't understand it. I don't understand this blessed life. But I know that the more the hand of the Lord comes on a person's life, things just work for them. It doesn't mean it's a life without problems. It does not mean that any of us have the privilege or opportunity of living a life without conflict or difficulty. That's not the issue. The issue is that even in conflict, Joseph was promoted to the head of the prison that he was a prisoner in. It didn't necessarily wipe out the prison sentence as much as it caused him to be elevated in the environment he was assigned to. It's the hand of the Lord upon you that will capture the hearts, the attention of people. It's important because the way you carry blessing is such a big deal. There are so many that as soon as they get blessed, if something happens, let's just say it's economic. Let's say that you have that your parents. In fact, I'll tell you one. After this weird little message that I was referring to I started announcing to people that I believe the Lord wants to give everyone an inheritance. And I know we have spiritual inheritance, but I mean in the natural. I believe that the Lord wants to release some sort of benefit of inheritance to every believer. It will not always come through a will, last will and testament, but something will happen in a person's life where they will realize God just interrupted the fact that my family has nothing to leave me, and he just caused me to be blessed with this. That's my inheritance, just to realize. So I shared this at a conference that I was doing with Randy. We were doing another healing school down in Southern California. And this guy came up to me after. He says, I was here when you said this last time. He says, my dad was a pastor. He died penniless. We've never owned much of anything at all as a family. In his younger years, he owned a small little farm and sold that to go into the ministry. And he said, what I didn't know, he says, you said everybody gets an inheritance. He says, what I didn't know was that my father had always kept the mineral rights to that little 40-acre farm. Well, they've just discovered natural gas on this little 40-acre farm, and he now has this huge check coming in every week. And it took place in a period of time that he could say, I know that this, obviously it's the Lord, but the Lord wants to do unusual things where it's your 40-acre piece that they find the gas on. You're the one that happens to get the upgrade on the airline seat, on the ticket. It's the fact that for some reason, when you go into that restaurant that you have to have a reservation for 6 months, when you walk in, there's a cancellation. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's things that just cause people's head to turn because it's just so unusual. And it's called the favor of the Lord. And I'll tell you what, your moment of breakthrough is determined by how you handle a problem. If you do not steward a conflict well, you will actually delay your moment of breakthrough. But the way you handle blessing is what determines the increase in favor.